Welcome back to Harbor. We continue to follow the developing situation in North Philadelphia, where 6 police officers have been shot and are being treated for non-life-threatening injuries at this point. Police urge residents to avoid that area. The suspect, who's holed up in a building in North Philly near Temple University, is not currently in custody. Continues to fire on the police, in fact. Sources tell NBC News that police were in the scene serving a warrant. Well, there's a massive police presence surrounding the building, as you'll see here. A spokesperson told NBC News they are attempting to talk to the shooter to get him to surrender. Here's an audio clips from over an hour ago when police arrived on the scene.
Stand by. Car stand by. Second assist. 3715. 115. Shots fired. Shots fired inside.
Give me SWAT ASAP. Long gun ASAP. Just making one over there. This goddamn still shot.
Car stand.
Radio.
Car stand by.
Well, the president of the United States has been briefed on the shooting and continues to monitor the situation from his vacation home in Jersey. For the latest, I'm joined by NBC 10 reporter Aaron Baskerville, who's on the scene. Aaron, thank you for joining us. What do you know right now?
Well, Chris, right now I'm just staring at a whole bunch of officers taking a defensive position right now. We're near Erie and Sydenham, North Philadelphia, about 2 miles north of Temple. And right now, a whole bunch of officers are kind of huddled behind their vehicles and cars, and they're just focused on that building in that area where that gunman is still holed up right now. Some of the homes in this area have been evacuated. Me personally, I've heard at least 40 to 50 different gunshots. These are volleys. They are rapid fire. They're about 7 or 8 gunshots, and then maybe 5 minutes later, 7 or 8 more gunshots, and that continued for about a 35-minute period since I've been out here. Where I'm at, my exact location has kind of died down for the most part. But you've talked about some of the details. Some of our sources are saying that at least 1 officer, maybe 2, went inside that house serving a warrant for drugs. They went inside that house and started to arrest a couple folks. According to our sources, that's when at least 1 gunman downstairs apparently started firing through the floor upstairs. There were other officers outside who obviously heard the gunshots and came rushing towards that home. They took on some gunfire. If there's any good news whatsoever right now, is that those 6 officers that have been shot are facing non-life-threatening injuries. We've heard there may be a couple other injuries to officers. They weren't shot, but just maybe some injuries responding. But we haven't heard any gunshots in the last 30 minutes or so. But at my position right now, I'm staring at least 50 officers who are kind of just waiting to see what happens here, still kind of taking that defensive position behind vehicles out here.
Thank you so much, Aaron Baskerville. Thank you for joining us. That's actually the neighborhood. My earliest memories are from right that area there. My grandparents lived there for years. Let me bring in Jim Kavanaugh, former hostage negotiator for the ATF, and Tom Winter, an NBC News investigative correspondent. Gentlemen, thank you. First of all, Jim, this is a row house neighborhood, working-class neighborhood, African-American. I don't know what we know, except that you start shooting in those neighborhoods, there's a lot of people around.
Right. They had to clear all those people out of the surrounding houses, Chris. And, one of the early reports, I don't know if it's been resolved, from NBC Philly was that officers were trapped inside the house. That poses quite a great dilemma for SWAT commanders if that's the case, because they have to get their rifles trained to keep the shooter away from their officers if they are trapped inside. And what Aaron just reported, maybe they were on the 2nd floor trying to make some arrests. So it is possible that's still ongoing. That's going to slow things down. No shooting for 30 minutes may mean shooter's dead, may mean there's ongoing negotiations, may mean they're still trying to get him on the phone. We just don't know. The critical point is, are there any Philly police officers still in there? If they are, they're talking to their commanders, they're talking to their SWAT commander on their phones, on their radios, and they're trying to make sure they can get their rifles between those officers, the SWAT rifles, on target between those officers and any shooters.
We don't know whether they're being held ransom or held captive or not, do we?
Right, or maybe even in another room in the building and the shooter in another room, but they don't have access to leave, like they can't go in the hallway because the shooter's active. That's a possibility. So they may not be shot, may not be wounded, but they may just be trapped, and the SWAT commander will have to deal with that. Now, that was an early report. I don't know if Aaron and his team in Philly have verified it, but it's a concern, and it's a big issue for SWAT command. Also, any other people who might be wounded in there could be bleeding. So there is a critical time frame here as well.
Thank you so much, Jim Kavanaugh. Let's go to Tom Winter. Tom, what are your sources telling you?
Chris, a little bit of late information here. First off, I have the answer to Jim's question as far as whether or not there are officers inside of that house or whether or not there are any injured. There are no injured officers inside that house. As far as whether or not there are officers still holed up inside, that's information I am aware of. But with respect to the ongoing law enforcement situation and officer safety, I'm not going to discuss at this time. In regards to this incident happened approximately 4:30 this afternoon. It was due to a warrant that was being searched, a warrant that was being executed, rather, at that residence as part of an ongoing narcotics investigation. There are some initial concerns that the suspect involved, the shooter here, has an AR-15 style weapon. Police are incredibly concerned about that. At this time, they are trying to talk to him and trying to implore him at this point to end this. So more officers are not injured here tonight. 6 officers shot. The good news, or the silver lining here, Chris, if there is any, is that all those officers are expected to survive. In addition to that, there had been some local schools, even a daycare facility nearby. The indications that we're getting real time here, as I've been on the air with you and as you've been discussing it, is that they've been able to safely evacuate those centers. But this is still very much an active scene in the Philadelphia Police Department right now, is really concerned about officer safety moving forward and some things inside that house.
It's amazingly familiar territory for me. Anyway, thank you, Tom Winter and Jim Kavanaugh. That's a close-in neighborhood where neighbors all know each other. Coming up,